what we're doing is we're celebrating the 300th anniversary of the death, or what we say, the first into eternal life of Antonio Marga, who is a priest and missionary and the founder of Nacogdoches.
And I mean, obviously, it's a big turnout. How does it feel to see everyone here today?
Oh yeah, it's great to see so many people coming together to really celebrate the history of the Nacogdoches, and the life of this really incredible.
And could you talk a little bit about what did he do? Why is he so important to Nacogdoches history?
So Venerable Antonio Marhill was born in Spain. He came over at just 26 years old to be a missionary here in the Americas. He did a lot of his work throughout Mexico and Central America, but he also came up into Texas. He's known actually as the Apostle of Texas, because he founded missions through East Texas, and it really was the first person to bring Christianity to this area. Whenever they founded missions, they didn't do it in this kind of like, oh, we're going to, force Christianity upon these. What they did is they established places where, first off, safety and security could be established for not just the settlers and the missionaries, but really for the entire community. Raiding tribes is a real problem, and so area to protect the people who were in this area. And then they came and they just lived and worked alongside. Then they trade kahias, tools, and really built a community in which they could all come together and live that life, peace and of love that we were braided from.
And obviously, I'll let that stop from. How important is it to still uphold that community, that Christian community here in Nacogdoches?
Absolutely. Every single one of us, we want to live with the love and with peace and the joy that all of us desire and that all of us were really created for. And so we can reestablish that kind of bond, that community here in Nacogdoches. We're only going to see our community thrive and really, live to be the people that God wants us to be and that we all want to.
And also, what is the significance of the 300 years?
So 300 anniversary means that, it's been genuinely centuries, generations of Christians here in Nacogdoches. And really, as we speak of Nacogdoches as the oldest town in Texas, we've been living here and sharing that community for so many years.
And what is the message that you'd want people to take away from this event?
That Nacogdoches is a town that was founded early on to be a town of community, of safety and security, and also a community set on God.
And then my last question is, what other events are you guys holding today besides this rite?
So we have the pilgrimage starting at 9 o'clock. Then CDTX was very generous to host a lunch down at Genia Stern Park. And then we'll have reenactments throughout the afternoon at Zion Hill at 1:45, and 2:30. Then we've got a little bit of time over at Sacred Heart Catholic Church where we've got some kids games, be able to relax. Also, we've got some ice cream, popsicles, things of that sort to cool everybody down. And then our bishop will be in at 5 p.m. to celebrate Mass.
Just start by asking what brought you guys out here today.
I think we wanted to, we wanted to see with our own eyes the miracle. The water is still flowing after 300 years, more than 310 years. So that's pretty incredible. Celebrate, the history of Father Marhill is holiness, personal holiness, and also pray that eventually one day the Pope will say, "Hey, you're a saint." And then we'll have hopefully the first saint from Texas or in Texas. So I think that's what we're here for, to support the cause and to celebrate the history. So, yeah.
And then obviously there was a huge crowd. A lot of people came out to celebrate, to be a part of this. How does it feel to just be here with them all?
Yeah, I think it's amazing that there's a real community of support here in Nacogdoches. If I think from across the state, I think there's been people all from across the state that have come out here. And so it's really amazing to be part of a community that, all want the same thing, and are all working and then able to have a party and you have a good time, celebrating the cause and Father Marhill. So yeah, really fantastic to be here.
And then my last question is, if you would want people, that weren't able to come out here to know anything about this event, about this community, what would it be?
I would just tell them the story. I think someone who spoke earlier was saying he's like he's like a second Moses. You know, he strikes the rock and water comes out. So, you know, knowing the story of the miracle, and then also, you know, about Father Marhill's life, I think is that's the most important thing. I mean, that's the reason we're here to celebrate him and his death, 300 years, and that would be the thing good to know about him. So,
And who went barefoot everywhere on principle, who fasted every day of his life, and who insisted in writing on his own insignificance. End quote. Meanwhile, around him, everyone else was calling him something else. They called him the Apostle of New Spain. They also eventually started calling him the Apostle of Texas. He walked into Nacogdoches in July of 1716. He founded Mission Nuestra Senora de Guadalupe. He had his hand in 3 more nearby missions. And then he left here and went on to establish the missions in San Antonio. Of course, in East Texas, you have to use the material, which is a lot of wood around here. And so building the missions here, you know, unfortunately, we don't have any buildings left. We don't actually have the missions left. In San Antonio, of course, they were all built out of rock and brick and such. So you actually can see the missions there in San Antonio. But a drought came in 1717, a year after he got here. The corn failed and families at the mission began to pack up and started leaving because there was nothing to drink and nothing coming. And so Father Marhill went down to the Leonana Creek and he prayed and he struck the rock with his staff. And 2 openings in the rock, 2 springs came out. Los ojos de Father Marhill, but los ojos de Marhill, the eyes of Father Marhill. But 115 years later, in 1833, a very significant Texan happened to be sitting in a prison cell in Mexico City. But he could not stop thinking about this incredible man, about Father Marhill. This man's name was Stephen F. Austin. And this is what he wrote about Father Marhill. Quote, "This monk is very famous, for he has been a second Moses. At Nacogdoches, all the springs went dry, and he went out with the image of the saints and necessary apparatus to perform the miracles. He struck a blow with a rod of iron on a rock which stands at the bank of the Creek of Wanana in Nacogdoches, and immediately a stream of water gushed out, sufficient to supply the inhabitants with water and drink. This miracle was canonized in Rome, and a print or engraving of that fact was made in order to perpetuate it. This proves, a century after the fact, after his miracle, that this story traveled all the way to San Antonio, all the way to Mexico, all the way to Rome, far enough for Rome to order that this be remembered and an engraving of it. This also proves that the people of Nacogdoches in 1833 are still telling of his miraculous story. And they were getting it right. This also proves that the most famous skeptic of Texas history, Stephen F. Austin, could not quite bring himself to dismiss this wonderful miracle. Father Marhill left Nacogdoches, ends up going back to San Antonio and then Zacatecas in 1722, and then Mexico City into his grave in 1726. His brother friars started petitioning Rome almost immediately to canonize Father Marhill as a saint. The cause openly formally in 1769.